I feel it a very great honour that I should be called upon to take part among those who are giving their tributes to my beloved pastor and friend, Dr. Martin Lloyd-Jones. I had been reading as a preacher a great deal of Puritan theology, particularly Puritan sermons. I believe in sermons. Dr. Lloyd-Jones believed in them too. Now, sermons, as he used to say, do not read well, because an essay reads very nicely, but a sermon, because it's a spoken word and because it's for people to listen to, must have continual repetitions. Therefore, it doesn't read well. However, we make an exception with regard to his published sermons. However, you do need to make yourself acquainted with that fact. If you want to profit by any sermons, any good sermons, any real sermons, have patience. Well, now, I, in 1938, heard him preach. And I said to him, "You're preaching Puritanism." "That's right," he said. And he told me an old minister said to him, "You're giving us the old truths with brand new suits on." It's a very good description, and a very necessary one too. It's not enough to try to imitate a Puritan type of speech and think that you're doing Puritan work. Well, somebody said that his sermons were all symphonies. I can't think of a better description of them. He stated the theme, and then he repeated it again and again with variations. And at last, the sermon culminated in an overwhelming conviction of the truth that he was exploring and expounding. I remember a man, when I was working in the city, who had been recommended to come and listen to Dr. Lloyd-Jones by his brother-in-law in Northern Ireland, a good evangelical. And I said to him, "Well, how did you get on?" "Well," he said, I felt I wanted to say to him, "Well, no, get on, tell us more." I said, "You know what was the matter with you? You weren't attending to what he was telling you. Let's get on. Let's skip important passages in order to see what the end is." You couldn't do that with Dr. Lloyd-Jones. Symphonies. Wonderful. And then I took great notice of what happened as a result of these symphonies. You've heard already of the wealth of conversions. I was in a position to see these conversions. They used to come along the passage to the vestry like wounded birds. And he had time for them in the vestry. Indeed, I sometimes said he had more time in the vestry than he had in the pulpit, and he didn't stint his time here. And this stream of conversions was continual. It characterized the whole of his ministry. I tried to pastor churches and preach, and I used to say to myself, "Why in the world didn't I meet with this man before ever I started?" But there, he never despised anybody, however weak and feeble, always encouraged them. And then I noticed another thing, the deepening of the spiritual life. Dr. Robin Wells has referred to it among students. And then another wonder. Dr. Campbell Morgan referred to this place as a preaching centre. And I noticed under this wonderful preaching, these spiritual symphonies that he delivered, a fellowship grew out of that preaching centre. A real fellowship, an abiding fellowship. And that in spite of the fact that its members were scattered wide over the country. What a power he had in drawing people to the sound of the gospel. Well, he introduced me to the Evangelical Library. And it has been a most rewarding 20 years to work up at that library. He said to me, "You'll meet with many interesting people there." And he was right. Not only contact with readers, not only the privilege of sometimes advising somebody about what was the best book on a certain subject, but also with dedicated fellow workers. And then to notice too that not only was his influence apparent there in the siting of the library in London, which of course was most important, but in the deepening interest in solid reading, and not always, I'm afraid, a feature even of evangelical Christianity. We ought all to be readers. You've heard what Mr. Ian Murray has been saying. And those spiritual symphonies are enshrined in the volumes that have been published. May God give us grace to give him the glory and to pour out our thanksgiving continually to him that he gave us such a man in this 20th century who, without any pretentiousness, sent this message of the gospel far and wide, this message which will endure. And so I come to the end of what I have to say, and I don't think I can do better than quote that wonderful passage from the book of Ecclesiastes, which reads, "The preacher sought to find out acceptable words, and that which was written was upright, even words of truth. The words of the wise are as goads and as nails fastened by the masters of assemblies, which are given from one shepherd." May God write that upon our hearts.